Hey, what's going on, everybody? You're listening to the SANE Show, the show about nothing and everything. I'm your host, Cliff, and today I have a special guest joining us. He's the immediate past chairman of Jazz Art Charlotte, a nonprofit of the Blumenthal, fashion designer, model, judge for Charlotte Fashion Week, and local boutique owner, Todd Albaum.
A lot to say in one breath there, but thank you for having me. Honored and grateful to be on your show.
Yeah, I'm honored to have you on the show. I've been really excited to do this. I know I've been talking to a lot of people about this leading up to this recording, so I'm going to really be excited for them to finally get to listen to it when it comes out. So, thank you for taking time to, come on the SANE Show. Really quick, before we hop into it, I want to take and shout out all of our listeners across the world. I just realized a couple of days ago we have listeners in over 50 countries. It's really exciting. Thank you guys for continuing to support the show, continuing to like, share, subscribe, and continuing to spread the word and elevate the SANE Show platform. And if you're listening and you don't follow us already, be sure to check us out on Instagram and Twitter. That's at the SANE_show, SANE_show. Again, SANE_show, SANE_show. That's on Instagram and Twitter. And then you can find us on Facebook at The SANE Show. Again, on Facebook, The SANE Show. So today we're going to be talking about jazz and the youth. We're also going to talk about how fashion is deep. That's going to be followed by an interview with Todd, so the listeners get to learn more about you and your involvement with Jazz Art Charlotte and some of the things related to that as well. So let's go ahead and kick this off.
First off, jazz and fashion both speak the same language. It's a universal language, and it's a language based on individuality. With jazz is a lot of timing, and it's a lot of making the right, taking it to new levels and new heights. It's different, never the same. It's a language in of itself that seasoned musicians kind of figure out once they're playing together. And fashion, the same thing. Everybody has their own look, their own feel, what keeps them comfortable. And it's an expression of your artistic ability. It's a universal language. Let's start off with jazz, just like you asked. And I'm really glad that we're starting off talking about the youth and talking about children, because when you're 10, 12, 13 years old, you have so many choices in life, and it could be challenging today being a kid than ever before because you've got so many outlets.
That's very true.
And jazz is an old soul, basically. Jazz had its roots that go back to slavery days. It was an African American musical way to create individuality and in freedom of expression. Back in the days when slaves came to the United States, they ended in New Orleans, and that's really the birthplace of jazz. Jazz was born in New Orleans and Congo Square. That's what it's called. And it now is the of Louis Armstrong, who really took jazz in the early 1900s and brought it through to what it is today. So jazz appeals to an older crowd in general. Jazz is also one of those things that is very desirable by millennials because it's almost a throwback. It's an old school reinvention of music, and jazz has influenced all kinds of music over generations as well. And what's great about jazz is it reinvents itself on the contemporary side, but old school jazz, that Ella Fitzgerald, Billie Holiday, John Coltrane, those kinds of things still live, but it's just harder and harder to keep going. And that's why youth and jazz is so important, to keep the ideas and the music alive. Jazz Art Charlotte is a not-for-profit here in Charlotte. We have a jazz room called the Jazz Room, or the Backstage Theater, and we do tributes to great jazz legends. We also have not only the monthly series at the Jazz Room, but we have educational component where we teach children how to play jazz instruments and how to learn impeccable timing and how to work collectively together as a group and shine through a trumpet or through a saxophone or through a trumpet.
I know you were telling me, because again, you chaired the organization at one point, and I think it makes it rather unique because I told you I had a jazz artist on previously a few episodes ago, but to have somebody like yourself on that comes from a different angle.
Mhm.
And one of the things you talked about was the administrative side of it. If you could just kind of highlight, why is it important for to have these kinds of organizations from that standpoint? Not so basically, not as an artist, but as an administrative person like yourself.
A jazz organization, and there's many of them around the United States. There's Jazz at Lincoln Center. That's the number one, that's owned by Wynton Marsalis. You've got Jazz at St. Louis, Jazz at San Francisco, Jazz at Cleveland. These are all jazz not-for-profit organizations that have chain of command, people that come together collectively on a board, and they make board decisions to how to bring jazz to a region. So you've got two different groupings. You've got musicians, you've got the facility, you got the instruments itself, and then you've got board members. So Jazz Arts Charlotte used to be called Jazz Arts Initiative. We had a name change under my watch. We're owned by Jazz at Lincoln Center. So Wynton Marsalis had come up here and endorsed us, if you will, a year ago, less than a year ago. And it's so important to have that chain of command, to have a board for a not-for-profit such as Jazz. So our board is made up of a treasurer, secretary, vice chairman, chairman, and then board members. And then there's separate committees that each board member becomes part of. And these committees help bring jazz to the area through fundraising, through grants, through corporate donations, corporate donors, because you need money in order to make things grow. And once you have growth, you bring that growth into different areas. So that's what a board does for any kind of not-for-profit, otherwise known as a 501c. But in the jazz community, most jazz boards just try to grow their jazz room, paint the picture of awareness, get some really good acts that come in, maybe do a couple salon parties at people's homes and bring in new donors to the organization. Those are patrons. Maybe form what's called a guild. That means your best patrons are your little soldiers that go out and tell more people about it. So we have all that in place here at Jazz Art Charlotte. But what separates us from the herd is we have an educational component where we teach children, the youth, how to play instruments. And we are funded from Knight's Foundation. We're funded from the Arts and Science Council that's here in town. Arts and Science, or otherwise known as ASC, is a tremendous component to the arts all over the country, but tremendous resources for us here in Charlotte. So they fund many different organizations, and they like us very much, and they fund us nicely. And then the monies are earmarked for specific requirements or specific things that we say we're going to do. So let's talk about education. What we do is we go through the Mecklenburg school systems and we pluck out kids that are interested in excelling in music. And when we find a school that has 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, we might show up in their gymnasium with a jazz band and talk about jazz and talk about where jazz came from. And we have, professional musicians that are doing this during the school day. And these kids are sitting on the floor, making believe they're playing a trumpet or a trombone or drumming. And that's the very beginning, getting their interests. So we go through a bunch of school systems, and then we start getting kids that are interested. And then we have something called Jazz in School. And these kids are trained by clinicians, typically over at UNCC. And we have I said jazz in school. I'm sorry. I meant to say jazz in session. And it's an after school program. And the idea is to make it free. Do you play an instrument at all?
I used to actually play the piano.
But you're a pretty good piano player.
I wish I was. I was more of a vocalist.
Okay. When you tap into kids at the age of 12 years old, they're very impressionable.
Right.
See, sometimes you look at a kid and they don't exactly know what they want to do. It's easy for them to play a video game, but jazz is an art. These kids never had that opportunity. I mean, you do in school, especially church. You got band leaders, stuff like that. So these kids have like an advantage. Some of these kids, they already have the bug in their ear to play an instrument. So we have clinicians, we have trained musicians teach these kids on a weekly basis. And then these kids get really good. I mean, like, you'd be blown away how good these kids can get very quickly. So that we got going on here in Charlotte, and a lot of it is through the Mecklenburg school system. So these kids, they practice, they train, they practice, they grow together, they build bonds together, they understand timing. It's impeccable timing, because jazz is a music form that you just feed off of each other.
All right, now we're back. We're going to talk about how deep fashion is. All right, I'm really excited about this one. One of the things I want to talk to you about, obviously, fashion is deep. We were kind of having this conversation before the show. It's much more than just colors and threads and all of those things that people think about, right? When they go shopping or whatever, right? There's an art to it, right? And I wrote it down. One of the things you said is style is a universal language.
Mm-hmm. It
In
sure
which I
is.
agree with. One of the things I was thinking about is how I went shopping a few weeks ago. I'm looking for some clothes, and I'm looking at some clothes. I'm like, oh, that looks nice, but that doesn't look like me. It's too loud. I try to be low key. For me, my clothes need to be a little low key because my personality is loud. So it's like I don't want to be loud, have a loud personality, and then my clothes be loud as well. And it's a number of things. So go ahead. I know you have some thoughts.
No, yeah, you would look like a hot mess if you got clothing overshadows your personality. And some people like that. Everybody's comfortable with it in their own skin, and it'll blow you away sometimes. Real quickly, yesterday, I'm at the Ballantine Hotel, and this guy with this chapeau in this sweater, he looked like a bad version of Woody Allen, or some old French dude from Paris. And then he starts talking with the thickest Brooklyn Bronx accent. It was like the look didn't match the voice.
Mm-hmm.
But what did match was he was living his fashion. He was in his fashion comfort zone. He created his own look that he was comfortable with. Every person has that opportunity, because we're all different. We look different, shop different, we have different habits. Some people are shy and they want their clothes to look pretty cool on them, to give them that edge. People are over the top. I know a lot of people that are just way over the top. It's like that way with so many things. If you put on one more accessory, it's an overkill. Some people are minimalists. You wear just a little bit, but the right stuff. I've become that guy. So my background brings me in front of some fairly famous people in the fashion world over years. And a lot of them were really impressed with what I do, just as I'm impressed with what they do. Some very famous designers, Project Runway, for example, Tim Gunn. And at the end of the day, this is what I love about fashion. You ready for this one?
I'm ready.
There's no right and there's no wrong.
Oh, man. I wasn't expecting that.
There's no right and there's no wrong. Fashion does not have an instruction manual. Fashion is purely individualized, what makes you happy. You could put the coolest looking outfit on somebody and they would hate it. Not because it doesn't look great on them, but they don't need $500 pair of jeans and $1,000 shirt and a $2,000 jacket. So they won't wear it, even though they could afford it, because it makes them feel overindulging on price when I could get something else that'll look just as good for only $100. So the outfit itself can change one's personality, and the outfit could also make somebody feel like $1 million. There's no right and there's no wrong. There's no law for fashion. The law for fashion is express your own individuality, feel fabulous in what works for you.
You kind of blew my mind there because this is just like the conversation I was having with my friend. I told you I had a visual artist on a few weeks ago, and we were talking about, self-expression, right?
Mhm.
And we were talking about the same thing with art. And she's a classically trained artist. That there's no right and no wrong,
Yeah,
and that in
right.
art you should express yourself. And it's tripping me out, honestly, how this is coming back up, because one of the things we were talking about is vulnerability, right?
Right.
How comfortable are you in your own skin? And so for us to be talking about fashion,
Mhm.
and again, because you mentioned it too, like people being comfortable in their own skin to wear what they want to wear and what they see fits them.
Look,
Uh,
I say this, our forefathers who created the Constitution and the Bill of Rights and all that stuff, freedom of expression, and there should have been another subtitle that said freedom of fashion flow, to wear what makes you happy. No, there's no law. There's
mhm,
no law. It all comes down to, just like you said before, it all comes down to how do you feel in the clothes? How does it make you feel? I could go to Goodwill and I could find the coolest things for under $9.
mhm.
I could put them on and I could go into a nightclub and I can go into a lounge somewhere and get compliments left and right. It's how it's what you do with what you have and how you feel in it.
Oh man, that's so spot on. And
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, if it wasn't for my friend that's in fashion and yourself, I would have been completely oblivious to how people in the fashion industry think, because I'm pretty sure some people have this misconception that it's like the movie with Meryl Streep, Devil Wears Prada,
Oh yeah.
and and we have these stereotypes and these stigmas about the people that are in the fashion industry. So that's why for you to say what you said, I'm just like, wow. Well, I didn't know that you guys pretty much think the same way. Like, this fashion is art
Yeah.
in itself. So, and that's
And our forefathers should have said the First Amendment they got right, freedom of the speech, but the Second Amendment should have been freedom to wear whatever makes you happy.
hmm
That should have been an amendment. That
yeah,
would be pretty cool back then. Because look what they wore back then. You
yeah.
see walking down the street looking like that today.
Now, I will say this too. A lot of and never really told anybody this, but I'm not a big fan of really watching award shows, like the Grammys, Emmys,
Neither am I.
Academies. But I will say I love watching or looking at the photos the day after of the
Oh,
people on the red carpet.
who wore what and the winners and the losers.
Yeah, 'cause
Hey,
I look at some of those, especially it was last year. One of the actresses, she wore a green dress,
mhm.
and I was just like, wow. In my opinion, certain colors may take a little bit more work than others when it comes to pulling them off. And so what she did with that green, it just blew me away. And I'm like, wow, that is something. Like it was just amazing, that dress. And it wasn't anything crazy in my opinion, anything crazy. It was something simple, and it's like, wow. But it's like a art. It's like watching
it, it,
a walking gallery, right?
it's
When you see
expectation.
those people on the red carpet.
It all comes down to expectation. You're expected to
hmm
wear a $10,000 outfit
hmm
minimum, and it has to be by Versace or by anybody who's fancy. That's Chanel, Prada, all the big names. They're expected. That's what they expect. I'm
hmm
the guy who would walk down the runway and somebody will say, "Hey, who are you wearing today?" I'll open my jacket and say, "I'm wearing the Salvation Army, and I'm wearing these pants are from Goodwill, or Old Navy,
hmm
because it doesn't matter. What matters is how you feel in it. What
Right.
matters is will you wear it again? What
hmm
matters is does it move you? Because here's the other thing: when you wear clothing, forget about the price tag. Anyone who pays a lot of money for clothing, just say it's unnecessary
hmm
because at the end of the day, how you feel in your clothes will A, reflect your mood, B, reflect your work. Because you're in a happy mood, you'll be more productive because you're just a happier person. But it also could lower your stress, which could also alter and change your body through disease because
Hmm.
you got a better mindset going into the day where you don't have to you feel good, you look good, you've been complimented because you just feel like what you've got on works for your particular personality.
Hmm.
And all of that happens on the inside
Right.
because of what you wore on the outside.
Right. It's like they say, look good, do good, feel good. I mean, yeah.
Hey, you don't look good, we don't look good.
That's true. That's very true.
I've been in the fashion world for a long, long time as a designer and a model and fashion week and judges and stuff like that. The happiest people are the ones who are proud to wear their style openly. Again, style is a universal language.
Okay, now for the part that we all been waiting for, the interview. I'm going to go ahead and ask you some questions, Todd, so that the listeners can learn a little bit more about your involvement in Jazz Art Charlotte. So to kind of kick things off, because we in the first segment, you were kind of touching on this, but as far as being able to introduce opportunities to others, what does that feel like for you? How does that feel? What does that do for you?
Let me tell you something. When we took the kids, 14, 15 years old, they get so good, they're called the All-Stars. Those are the best of the best here in Charlotte, the kids that are part of the program. We took them to New Orleans and just to watch them and listen to them and see their reaction to how other people they've never met before perceive them, and to have strangers come up to them and say, "Oh my God, you are so good." It's inspiring. And I've learned in life, because I've done a lot of things. I've done a lot of things pretty good, and I've done a lot of things that maybe I should have done differently. But there's one thing, even if I should have done it differently, if I've inspired somebody, if I've made somebody say, you know what, I'm going to stick with this instrument. You know what, maybe this instrument didn't work out for me, but what I learned from playing that instrument, I could put into other parts of my life. Can't take that away. That's a great feeling to inspire people. And that's what I get most out of it, is to watch and to have known that I can inspire people.
It's really great, really noble too.
Oh yeah.
So, how did you get involved with Jazz Art Charlotte?
Well, there's a guy in town. His name is Ronnie Bryant. Ronnie was working for Charlotte Regional Partnerships, and they bring big companies into Charlotte. And he's
Hmm.
really does. He was almost like a mentor to me at one point. He was on the board as a board member, and he said to me, you should be involved in this. You would fit right in. And he brought me to a board meeting. That was 7 years ago, maybe 8 years ago. Since then, I enjoyed it enough to remain on the board. Then I became his vice chairman. And then I became somebody else's vice chairman. And then I became the chairman. And I became the chairman again. So I was 2 years vice chairman, 2 years chairman, and now
Okay.
the immediate past chair. So I've completed the cycle. I've stayed on this board or involvement with Jazz Art Charlotte now for my 7th year.
Oh man.
The board only allows you, the bylaws only allow you to stay on for 6 years. But when you leave on the 6th year as chairman, they encourage you to stay one more year because you've got all the connections. You're well connected in the community. And
Right.
that's right now. I've got 4 months left. Now, let me tell you, Jazz Art Charlotte's not the only game in town. There's a lot of other jazz groups in town. So what I'm happy about is that under my reign as chairman and vice chairman, we've made Charlotte a jazz region, a jazz region. There's many to choose, not many, but there are others to choose. But it brings people here, it brings acts here, and it brings education here.
That's great.
Yeah.
Talk about making an impact.
Yeah, exactly right.
And you've been doing this for 7 years, and obviously you've done a lot, and you've got to experience a lot.
Oh,
You
yeah.
got to see a lot. What's been your biggest takeaway?
Probably going to New Orleans with these kids and watching them open up. They're good. And when they get there, they're just on fire. I'll never forget just hanging out with them. I felt like watching a flower bloom and you're right there in real time. That was one of my big takeaways, is going with these kids to New Orleans and experiencing that. Another big takeaway is we've changed our name from Jazz Arts Charlotte, Jazz Arts Initiative to Jazz Arts Charlotte. We had Wynton Marsalis come to town. That was a good takeaway. Plus, growing the jazz room, to a sellout crowd month after month. Feels good being part of that, being a part of the teamwork to make that happen.
That's good.
I
That's really
always
good.
say, I always say to people, life begins outside your comfort zone, especially if you're a kid. Life begins outside your comfort zone. So if you could get comfortable with being uncomfortable, that means you can play a jazz instrument and get used to it. You could do anything.
Okay. That is really impressive stuff. And I
Other
can only
people-
imagine how good it feels to,
Yeah,
be able to experience all of that and be a part of someone's
success.
growth. Yeah. And success. Yeah, definitely.
The only growth,
Really, go ahead.
really the growth end. Absolutely.
Yeah. Really quick, before I let you go, if you could give the listeners some information as far as where they can find out more about Jazz Art Charlotte in case they want to get involved or anything. And also if they want to keep it tabs on you, if there's anywhere that they can find you or anything like that, go ahead and let them know, please.
Surely. Be more than happy to. If anybody wants to learn more about jazz here in the Queen City, Charlotte, and see these kids perform, check out our website right out the gate. So the website would be www.thejazzarts.org. Thejazzarts.org. That's the website. The Jazz Room is located on the corner of College and Fifth. It's the back end of the Blumenthal, and it is called by name the Stage Door Theater. So it's a small black box theater. You're encouraged to take photographs when you're in there during the show and live Facebook or Instagram or whatever you want to do. It's like you're being in New Orleans or you're in Chicago or you're in New York. It's a real great big nice stage. It's very intimate. A couple of tables up front with candles and then stadium seating. The monthly series is the third Thursday, Friday, and Saturday of every month. And there's two shows, a 6 o'clock show and an 8:15 show. But on Saturdays, it's a 7 o'clock show and a 9:15 show. And again, that email address is the Jazz Arts. The website is thejazzarts.org.
Cool. Thanks for sharing that. You guys definitely make sure that you go and check that out. There's a rewind button if you need to rewind and write it down. So definitely go out, check them out, show your support. And if you want to get involved, definitely go to the website and look at more information about that. Really quick, thank you, Todd. Thank you for coming on the show. It's definitely been a pleasure. Definitely going to have you back on in the future. So thank you again. And thank you to the listeners for continuing to tune in and show your support for the SANE Show. It really means a lot. Again, go check out our guests and Jazz Art Charlotte, and also be sure to check out the SANE Show on social media and listen and get yourself caught up on all the other episodes as well. And with that being said, you are listening to the SANE Show, the show about nothing and everything. And until next time, we're out.